The inheritance lawyer wouldn't meet my eyes as he read my parents' will, his hands trembling as he announced that my sister Victoria got the $3.2 million penthouse and the $5 million investment portfolio, while I, Olivia, received a rotting farmhouse and exactly $300 cash. My fiancé pulled off my engagement ring right there in the parking lot, saying he couldn't marry a failure, before driving away to start his new job at Victoria's law firm. But as I stood crying in that moldy kitchen, my hand brushed against strange scratches on the floor that led to a hidden handle beneath the ancient refrigerator. What I found when I opened that basement door didn't just change my life. It exposed 3 generations of murder, betrayal, and stolen art worth $127 million that my mother died protecting. If you are watching this video right now, I would love to know where you are from. Drop it in the comment section below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family relationships that take unexpected turns. The rain hadn't stopped since the morning of the funeral. I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic, watching the windshield wipers struggle against the downpour, delaying the inevitable moment when I'd have to walk into the Willowbrook Country Club. My hands were still stained with cerulean blue and cadmium yellow from the art class I'd taught that morning. Third graders working on their Mother's Day cards, unaware their teacher had just buried her own mother alongside her father. "Olivia, where are you?" My sister Victoria's text lit up my phone. "The reception started 20 minutes ago. How do you manage to be late to our parents' funeral?" I knew what awaited me inside. The same disapproving looks I'd received my entire life, the whispered comparisons between the successful daughter and the disappointment. But duty called, and I couldn't dishonor my parents' memory more than I apparently had in life. The country club's marble foyer echoed with subdued conversation and the clink of crystal glasses. I spotted Victoria immediately, impossible to miss in her perfectly tailored black Chanel suit, holding court near the memorial display. Her engagement ring, a massive diamond from Senator Blackwood's son, caught the light as she gestured animatedly to a group of our parents' business associates. "There she is," Victoria announced, her voice carrying across the room. "My sister, the artist." The way she said artist made it sound like vagrant. I made my way through the crowd, accepting hollow condolences from relatives who couldn't quite meet my eyes. Uncle Richard muttered something about it being such a shame, though whether he meant my parents' death or my career choice was unclear. The memorial video began playing on the enormous screen they'd set up. Victoria's Harvard Law graduation, her first case win, the ribbon cutting at her firm's new office, her engagement party at the senator's estate. 20 minutes of Victoria's achievements set to our father's favorite classical music. Then, almost as an afterthought, a single photo of me from high school graduation before the screen went black. "Beautiful tribute," someone murmured. Harold and Margaret must have been so proud. My fiancé Ryan shifted uncomfortably beside me, his hand loosening from mine. "I need to take this call," he whispered, holding up his phone. "Work emergency." He'd been having a lot of those lately. Mr. Whitmore, our family's attorney for the past 40 years, appeared at my elbow. His usually composed face seemed troubled, and he kept adjusting his tie nervously. "Olivia, Victoria," he said, voice strained. "I know this is unusual, but your parents left specific instructions. The will must be read immediately following the reception." "Can it wait?" Victoria asked, irritation flashing across her features. "We have guests." "I'm afraid not. Your parents were quite explicit about the timing." The reading took place in the club's private library, all dark wood and leather-bound books that no one ever read. Victoria and I sat on opposite sides of the mahogany table while Mr. Whitmore unpacked his briefcase with trembling hands. Ryan had reappeared, sitting beside me but angled slightly away, as if already distancing himself. "Before I begin," Mr. Whitmore said, clearing his throat, "I want you both to know that your parents loved you very much. They thought long and hard about this distribution." Victoria leaned forward, confident. I sat back, already knowing how this would go. "To my daughter Victoria Margaret Hartwell," Mr. Whitmore read, "I leave the penthouse apartment at 1500 North Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, valued at approximately $3.2 million, the investment portfolio currently valued at $5 million, including all stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, my complete jewelry collection, and Harold's collection of vintage automobiles.
Victoria nodded, unsurprised.
This was her birthright, after all. To my daughter Olivia Rose Hartwell, he continued, and I held my breath. I leave the family farmhouse on rural Route 47 in Millfield, Illinois, and the sum of $300 in cash. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Victoria laughed, actually laughed. Is that all? She asked, composing herself. Nothing else? Mr. Whitmore avoided my eyes. That is the complete distribution as specified in the will. $300. Not even enough for a month's rent. And a farmhouse I'd seen only in childhood memories, one my parents had left to rot for the past 15 years. Well, Victoria said, gathering her papers, I suppose that settles everything. Olivia, when you're ready to discuss selling that old place, I have some developer contacts who might give you enough for a fresh start. Maybe you could finally go back to school for something practical. Ryan stood abruptly. I need to talk to you, he said to me, his voice cold. Outside. The parking lot was still slick with rain. Ryan walked to his BMW, then turned to face me, his expression one I'd never seen before, a mixture of disappointment and disgust. I can't do this, he said, pulling the engagement ring box from his jacket. I thought your family situation would provide us with security, a foundation to build on. But this? He gestured vaguely at the country club. Your parents saw what I'm finally seeing. You're 32 years old, Olivia, teaching finger painting to children while your sister builds an empire. Ryan, we don't need their money. It's not about the money, he snapped, though we both knew it was. It's about what it represents. You'll never amount to her, will you? Your parents knew it, Victoria knows it, and now I know it too. He pressed the ring box into my hand. Victoria's firm offered me a position. Senior Associate, Corporate Law Division. I start Monday. The betrayal hit harder than the inheritance slight. Victoria offered you a job?
When?
Does it matter? He was already walking away. I can't marry a failure, Olivia. I'm sorry, but I need someone who matches my ambition. He drove away, leaving me standing in the rain, holding a ring box that felt heavier than it should. Victoria found me there 10 minutes later, mascara running down my cheeks. Oh, honey, she cooed, her sympathy as fake as her eyelashes. Ryan told me what happened. Men can be so shallow about money, can't they? She pressed a business card into my hand. This is Marcus Stone, the developer I mentioned. The farmhouse land is worth maybe $50,000 if you're lucky, but that's enough to get you started somewhere new. Maybe you could even afford to go back to school, study something useful like accounting. The farmhouse was Grandma Eleanor's, I said quietly. Exactly why you should sell it, Victoria replied, her voice hardening. Do you want to end up like her? Crazy and broke, painting pictures no one wanted? Mother spent years trying to distance our family from that embarrassment. Don't undo all her hard work by clinging to some romantic notion of artistic heritage. She left me with those words, driving away in her Mercedes while I sat in my Honda, trying to process the complete destruction of my life in the span of an hour. The drive to Millfield took 3 hours through the rain. I passed 4 billboards advertising Victoria's law firm, Hartwell and Associates, justice delivered. Each one felt like another slap. My phone buzzed with messages from concerned friends who'd heard about the will reading. The news traveled fast in our social circle, or what used to be my social circle. The farmhouse squatted at the end of a dirt road like something from a horror movie. The roof had partially collapsed on the east side, windows were broken or boarded up, and vines had claimed most of the front porch. Someone had spray-painted "Haunted" across the barn door in red paint that looked uncomfortably like blood in the dying light. I sat in my car for a full 10 minutes, seriously considering Victoria's offer. $50,000 could buy me a fresh start somewhere no one knew my name, where I wasn't the family disappointment. But something made me get out and walk to the front door. Maybe it was stubbornness, or maybe just the fact that I had nowhere else to go. The key was under a flower pot that hadn't held flowers in decades, exactly where my mother had always kept spare keys. The door creaked open to reveal destruction. Water damage from the failing roof had rotted most of the ceiling, and the smell of mold was overwhelming. The furniture was covered in sheets that had partially disintegrated, and something scurried away when I turned on my phone's flashlight. The kitchen was worse. Cabinets hung off their hinges, the linoleum floor was peeling up in corners, and the ancient refrigerator stood silent and dark. This was my inheritance, a monument to decay and abandonment. I tried to make tea on the stove, but the gas wasn't connected. The faucet sputtered brown water before running clear. I found some old dishes in a cabinet, their edges chipped but still bearing my grandmother's initials. YH. That's when I broke. I threw the first plate against the wall, watching it shatter with a satisfaction that scared me. Then another, and another, screaming words I'd never said aloud before. About fairness, about favoritism, about parents who could look at two daughters and decide one deserved everything while the other deserved nothing. When I ran out of plates, I collapsed on the floor, sobbing until my throat was raw. Rain started leaking through the ceiling, drops landing on my face like the universe's final insult. That's when I noticed the scratches on the floor. At first, I thought the marks were just random damage, more evidence of the house's decay. But as I wiped away years of dirt and grime with my sleeve, a pattern emerged. Deliberate scratches forming arrows, all pointing toward the ancient Frigidaire that hulked in the corner like a dying whale. My grandmother had been an artist. My mother had told me that much before she stopped talking about her entirely. Your grandma Eleanor saw the world differently, she'd said once, then quickly changed the subject. Maybe this was just another example of that different vision, art carved into kitchen floors. But something made me stand up, made me approach that refrigerator with my phone's flashlight cutting through the growing darkness. The appliance hadn't worked in years, its door sealed shut with rust and age. I pulled hard, and it scraped across the floor with a sound like fingernails on chalkboard. Underneath, where the refrigerator had stood for God knows how long, was a brass handle set into the floor. My heart hammered as I knelt down, brushing away decades of dust. The handle was attached to a door, a perfect square cut into the floorboards, edges sealed with something that had prevented the wood from warping despite the moisture damage everywhere else. I pulled. Nothing. I pulled harder, putting my back into it, and heard a click. The door swung open on well-oiled hinges, revealing narrow wooden stairs descending into perfect darkness. Every horror movie I'd ever seen told me not to go down there. But what did I have to lose? My parents were dead, my sister had everything, my fiancé had left me for a job at her firm, and I was living in a house that was literally falling apart around me. If something wanted to kill me in that basement, it would have to get in line. The stairs were solid, not even a creak as I descended. The air grew cooler but not damp, strange for a basement in a house with so much water damage. My phone's light showed walls of smooth concrete, too modern for a farmhouse that was built in the 1890s. At the bottom, I found a light switch. Actual electricity, when the rest of the house barely had functioning outlets. The fluorescence flickered to life, revealing something impossible. A climate-controlled room, all white walls and perfect temperature regulation. Museum-quality storage systems lined every wall. And paintings. Dozens and dozens of paintings, each one stored properly in individual slots, protected from time and decay. I pulled out the nearest canvas with shaking hands. A landscape of the Illinois prairie, so vivid I could almost feel the wind in the painted grass. In the corner, a signature, Eleanor Hartwell, 1962. The next one, a portrait of a young woman who looked disturbingly like me. Same green eyes, same stubborn chin. Eleanor Hartwell, 1958. I pulled out painting after painting, each one more breathtaking than the last. My grandmother's work, all of it, perfectly preserved in this hidden vault beneath a dying house. This can't be real, I whispered, but my art teachers I knew better. These were masterworks. The technique, the emotion, the raw talent. My grandmother had been a genius. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Have you called Marcus Stone yet? He's eager to start demolition. Demolition. She wanted to demolish this. I fumbled with my phone, typing Eleanor Hartwell artist into Google. The results made me sit down hard on the concrete floor. Eleanor Hartwell, 1925 to 1978, considered one of the most important American artists of the mid-20th century, whose works were thought destroyed in a 1977 studio fire. Known pieces sell for millions at auction. The artist spent her final years in psychiatric care, with her husband citing chronic delusions and manic episodes. The loss of her paintings is considered one of the great tragedies of American art history.
Milio.
Each painting could be worth millions. I scrolled through auction results. A small Eleanor Hartwell sketch had sold at Sotheby's last year for $2.8 million. A painting similar to the ones surrounding me went for $8.7 million at Christie's. There were at least 50 paintings in this room. My phone rang.
Victoria.
Olivia, I've been thinking, she said, her voice honeyed with false concern. I know today was hard, but you need to be practical. Marcus can meet you tomorrow morning. He's prepared to offer $60,000, which is generous for that dump. You could pay off your student loans, maybe travel a little, find yourself. I'm still cleaning, I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. Cleaning? Olivia, just leave it. Marcus will handle everything. Oh, and Ryan asked me to tell you he's sorry about earlier. He was emotional. We all were. After she hung up, I stood in that basement surrounded by fortune and legacy, and I laughed. Then I cried. Then I laughed again, hysteria bubbling up like champagne. A knock on the front door made me freeze. It was past 10 at night. Who would be visiting? I closed the basement door carefully, pushing the refrigerator back into place before answering. An elderly man stood on the porch, holding a casserole dish. His face was weathered but kind, with eyes that seemed to see more than they should. You must be Olivia, he said. I'm Walter Garrison, from the next farm over. Thought you might be hungry. That's very kind, Mr. Garrison. Your mother used to visit, you know, he said, handing me the dish. Once a month, regular as clockwork. Always alone, always carrying art supplies down but never bringing them back up. My heart stopped. My mother came here? For years, right up until... He trailed off.
Well.
She was a good woman. Quiet but good. She'd want you to know that. After he left, I stood in that ruined kitchen holding a casserole dish, my mind racing. My mother had known. She'd been coming here, bringing art supplies down but not up. I moved the refrigerator again, descended those stairs, and this time noticed another door at the far end of the room, painted to match the white walls. My hand trembled as I turned the handle. The second room was a studio. An active, working studio with easels, brushes, canvases, and paintings, hundreds of them, all signed, Margaret Hartwell. My mother had been painting. My mother, who claimed she had no artistic talent, who pushed me toward practical pursuits, who said art was a luxury we couldn't afford. The paintings were all of me. As a baby, a toddler, a teenager, a young woman.
Me teaching.
Me painting. Me laughing, crying, living. Hundreds of moments she'd captured, memories preserved in oil and canvas. And not a single painting of Victoria. A letter sat on the main easel, my name written across the envelope in my mother's careful script. My darling Olivia, if you're reading this, you've found what Victoria must never have. She got what she values, money and status. You get what you'll treasure, truth and legacy. Your grandmother Eleanor wasn't crazy. She was betrayed by those who should have protected her. The paintings everyone thinks burned were saved by the only person who truly loved her, Walter Garrison, though he was Walterchin then, before he Americanized his name to avoid the prejudice that destroyed his own father's farm. I've spent 20 years cataloging Eleanor's work, preparing for the day it could finally be revealed. But I discovered something that changed everything. Your father and Victoria have been stealing from the estate for years, selling off pieces they claimed were destroyed, keeping the money hidden in offshore accounts. If you're reading this, it means they succeeded in silencing me. But they failed in the one thing that matters. They didn't find this. The house is yours alone, Olivia. The will is ironclad. Mr. Whitmore made sure of that, though it killed him to watch your father parade Victoria around while dismissing you. Don't trust anyone, my darling. Victoria will come for this if she learns of it. She's more like your father than I ever wanted to admit. The $300 is symbolic. It's what Eleanor paid for this farmhouse in 1950, starting our family's true legacy. You are the artist, Olivia. You are the truth keeper. You are the one I trust with everything that matters. All my love, Mom. I sank to the floor, the letter crumpling in my grip. Murdered. She was saying they murdered her. My phone buzzed. An email from Dr. Sarah Mills, my old art history professor from college. I'd sent her photos of 3 paintings an hour ago, unable to resist sharing with someone who would understand. Call me immediately. Do not tell anyone else about these paintings. I'm driving down tonight. Sarah arrived at 2 a.m., her usual professional composure shattered by excitement. She'd brought authentication equipment, UV lights, and enough coffee to fuel a small army. Olivia, she breathed, standing in the first room. Do you understand what you have here? My grandmother's legacy? The find of the century. Museums have been searching for these paintings for 40 years. The Smithsonian alone has a standing reward of $10 million for information leading to the recovery of Prairie Storm, which, if I'm not mistaken, is that painting right there. She worked through the night, documenting, photographing, authenticating. By dawn, she looked exhausted but exhilarated. There's a problem, she said over her 5th cup of coffee. The will left you the farmhouse and all contents within as they stand. That's good. It means all of this is legally yours. But if Victoria finds out before you properly document ownership, she could claim your parents had assets. She could challenge the will's validity, tie this up in court for years. What do I do? We need to be strategic. I know someone, James Rothschild, a collector and dealer. He's been searching for Eleanor Hartwell's lost works his entire career. He's also discreet and has the resources to protect you legally while we sort this out. A car door slammed outside. Through the broken window, I saw a man in an expensive suit approaching the house. Marcus Stone, the developer. Hide everything, I hissed to Sarah. Marcus Stone looked like money. From his Italian leather shoes to his perfectly styled silver hair, everything about him screamed success and ruthlessness. He didn't wait for me to invite him in, just pushed past me into the ruined living room, his nose wrinkling at the mold and decay. Ms. Hartwell, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. Your sister said you'd be ready to sign today. I haven't decided anything yet. His smile was all teeth, no warmth. Let me be clear. Victoria has already signed preliminary documents as the family representative. The development deal is happening. You can either take the $60,000 and walk away, or we can do this the hard way. She has no authority to sign for this property. Doesn't she? He pulled out his phone, showing me a document. Power of attorney, signed by her father 6 months ago, giving Victoria full authority over all family real estate holdings. My blood ran cold. This house was left specifically to me. After your parents' death, yes. But this was signed while they were alive. My lawyers tell me it supersedes the will regarding any business dealings already in motion. He looked around with disgust. $60,000 is generous for this dump. Take it. Sarah appeared in the doorway, having heard everything from the kitchen. And if she needs time to consider? Marcus's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Dr. Sarah Mills, art history professor and Ms. Hartwell's advisor on historical properties. Historical? He laughed. This place is a teardown. You have 48 hours, Ms. Hartwell. After that, I file for immediate possession based on the signed agreements. After he left, Sarah immediately called James Rothschild. Within 3 hours, he was standing in the basement, tears actually streaming down his face as he touched one of Eleanor's paintings. 40 years, he whispered. I've been searching for 40 years. James wasn't what I expected from a wealthy art dealer. Late 60s, wearing a cardigan with elbow patches, looking more like a literature professor than someone who brokered multi-million-dollar deals. Your grandmother was my teacher, he explained. Before the world turned on her. Before your grandfather had her committed. She was brilliant, revolutionary. When they said her work was destroyed, part of me died too. Can you help me? My dear, I would fight the devil himself to protect these paintings. But we need to be smart. Your sister, I've heard of her. She's connected to Senator Blackwood through his son, correct? I nodded. The senator sits on the National Gallery board. They've been trying to acquire Eleanor Hartwell pieces for their permanent collection. If Victoria knows about these paintings, she'd claim them. Or worse, the art world can be vicious when stakes are this high. He studied me carefully. There's something else, isn't there? Something you haven't told Dr. Mills. I showed him my mother's letter. His face went pale. We need more than art authentication, he said quietly. We need criminal lawyers, investigators, protection. That's when Ryan appeared at the door. Olivia, your car's outside, but you weren't answering your phone. He stood there in his designer jeans and Princeton sweatshirt, looking concerned and contrite. Can we talk? James and Sarah exchanged glances, then excused themselves to the barn, actually heading to their cars to give us privacy while staying close. What do you want, Ryan? To apologize. I was horrible yesterday. The stress of everything, seeing you in pain. I lashed out. He moved closer, reaching for my hand. I love you, Liv. The money doesn't matter. But it did yesterday. I was shocked, that's all. Your parents' decision seemed so unfair. But I've been thinking that farmhouse land must be worth something. Victoria mentioned developers are interested. We could sell it, start fresh somewhere else. Victoria mentioned. Of course. Is that why you're here? Did Victoria send you? Don't be paranoid. I came because I love you. Although, he hesitated, pulling out his phone. She did ask me to check if you'd started packing. For your own good, she said. The house isn't safe. I played along, letting him think I was confused and vulnerable. I don't know what to do, Ryan. The house is falling apart, but it was Grandma Eleanor's. It feels wrong to just demolish it. Eleanor? The crazy one who painted those weird pictures. They weren't weird. She was talented.
He scoffed.
So talented she died in an asylum. Come on, Liv. Don't romanticize mental illness. You're better than that. He walked around the kitchen, his eyes scanning everything. Have you been in all the rooms? Victoria wanted to know if you'd found anything interesting. Family documents, photo albums, that sort of thing. Just rot and ruin. What about the basement? My heart skipped. What basement? Old houses like this always have basements. Root cellars, storm shelters. He was staring at the refrigerator. That's been moved recently. See the scratches on the floor? I was trying to see if it worked. He knelt down, examining the floor closely. Too closely. These scratches look deliberate. Like markings. Ryan, why are you really here? He stood, his mask slipping slightly. Victoria's worried about you. Alone in this death trap, probably having one of your emotional episodes. She thinks you might hurt yourself. Or make irrational decisions. Like not selling to her developer friend. Like thinking this dump is worth more than it is. His phone buzzed. Victoria, of course. I should go. But, Olivia, think about my offer. We could work through this together. Victoria's promised to make me partner if I bring in new business. The sale of this land could be my first deal. After he left, I found 3 listening devices, one under the kitchen table, one in the living room, and one he'd tried to stick under the refrigerator when he'd knelt down. Amateur work. I left them where they were, but would be careful what I said near them. Sarah and James returned, bringing a surprise, a private investigator named Thomas Mitchell, former FBI, who specialized in art crime. Mr. Rothschild filled me in, Thomas said, his voice gravelly from years of cigarettes. You've got a perfect storm here, hidden assets, possible murder, and a sister with means and motive. We need to move carefully. The developer gave me 48 hours. Then we work fast. He pulled out a tablet. I've already started digging. Your parents' car accident. There were inconsistencies in the police report. Brake failure on a perfectly maintained 2-year-old Mercedes. Your father was obsessive about car maintenance. You think they were murdered? I think someone wanted it to look like an accident. The insurance payout was interesting too, changed 3 weeks before their death to make Victoria sole beneficiary. Your mother's signature on that change? Forensics might prove enlightening.
My phone rang.
Mr. Whitmore. Olivia, I need to see you immediately. Don't come to my office. Meet me at the Millfield Diner in an hour. Come alone. The diner was mostly empty, just truckers and insomniacs nursing coffee. Mr. Whitmore sat in a corner booth, looking older than his 70 years. I've carried this guilt for 6 months, he said without preamble. Your mother came to me 2 weeks before she died. She knew what your father and Victoria were planning. She wanted to change the will, leave everything to you. Why didn't she? She was scared. Your father had connections, threats were made. She gave me something instead. He pulled out a flash drive. Everything's on here. Financial records, recordings, proof of what they did to your grandmother Eleanor. Your mother was building a case. Recordings? Your mother was smarter than they knew. She recorded conversations between your father and Victoria for months, planning to have her declared incompetent, steal her inheritance, and worse. I plugged the drive into my phone, hearing my father's voice, cold and calculating. Margaret's becoming a problem. She found the offshore accounts. Victoria's response, then we deal with her like we dealt with Eleanor. Doctors can be bought. Diagnoses can be fabricated. If she won't sign voluntarily, we make her signature unnecessary. Accidents happen. The brake line? Too obvious. Maybe something with her medication. She takes those anxiety pills. Or a car accident. Those rural roads are dangerous in winter. The recording was dated 1 week before my parents died, both of them, in a car accident on a clear winter day. They killed him too? I whispered. Victoria's smarter than your father was, Whitmore said. She eliminated the witness and kept all the money. The police ruled it an accident, but your mother knew it was coming. That's why she made sure the farmhouse would go to you alone. She knew Victoria would never suspect it held anything valuable. Why didn't you go to the police? With what proof? The recordings could be explained away as family bickering. Victoria has judges in her pocket. But now, with what you've found, with the art as motivation, now we have a case. Back at the farmhouse, Thomas Mitchell had made discoveries of his own. Your sister's been busy, he said, showing me financial records. She's been selling paintings for years. Pieces she claimed were destroyed in that 1977 fire. 3 million here, 5 million there, all through shell companies. But how? The paintings are all here. Not all of them. Check this manifest your mother made. She cataloged everything 5 years ago. There should be 63 paintings in that basement. You have 51. 12 paintings. Worth potentially $100 million.
Gone.
There's more, James added. The Senator Blackwood connection? He's been using his gallery position to launder money through inflated art sales. Your sister's engagement to his son isn't romantic, it's a business merger. They need those paintings to cover their tracks. My phone buzzed.
Victoria.
Olivia, I've been patient, but this is ridiculous. You have 24 hours to sign the sale papers, or I'll have you declared mentally incompetent. I have documentation of your breakdowns, your therapy sessions, your inability to hold a real job. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Go ahead, I said, surprising myself with my calm. Try it. What did you find? Her voice was sharp now, suspicious. Mold, mostly. Some of Mom's old dishes. Why? Did you lose something? The silence stretched before she spoke again. 24 hours, Olivia. Don't test me. After she hung up, Sarah looked at me with concern. She means it. She'll come after you. Then we'd better be ready, I said, looking at the team assembled in my ruined kitchen. An art professor, a collector, a private investigator, and a guilty lawyer. Because I'm not letting her win. Not this time. Thomas's phone rang. He listened, his face darkening. That was my contact at the FBI. They've been investigating Senator Blackwood for 2 years. The art laundering is just the tip. If we can prove Victoria's involvement, we can bring them all down, I finished. But we need to be careful. Cornered animals are dangerous. And your sister? She's killed before. I thought about my mother, coming here month after month, painting portraits of the daughter she loved while hiding from the daughter she feared. She'd protected this legacy with her life. Now it was my turn to protect it. Then we'd better make sure she doesn't see us coming, I said, already formulating a plan. James, how quickly can you authenticate the remaining paintings? Give me 48 hours. Thomas, can you get the FBI interested? Already on it. Sarah, I need you to leak something to the press. Not about the paintings, not yet, but about a potential discovery. Something to make Victoria nervous, but not desperate. What about the developer? Whitmore asked. Let him come. By the time he arrives, we'll be ready. As they dispersed to their tasks, I stood alone in my grandmother's studio, surrounded by 3 generations of hidden art and buried secrets. The farmhouse might be broken, but what it protected was invaluable. Victoria thought she'd won by taking everything that glittered. She was about to learn that the real treasure was always hidden in the ruins. The plan came together at 3 in the morning, fueled by gas station coffee and righteous anger. James Rothschild had called in favors from 40 years in the art world, assembling a team that would make Victoria's legal sharks look like minnows. I've got authentication documents for every painting, James said, spreading papers across the kitchen table we'd salvaged from the ruins. 40 years of provenance research, chemical analysis results I've been gathering on every Eleanor Hartwell piece that survived. These paintings in your basement? They're ironclad authentic. Thomas Mitchell pulled up financial records on his laptop. Your sister's been sloppy. The shell companies she used to sell the stolen paintings? They all trace back to accounts she opened before she was supposedly aware any paintings existed. That's premeditation. What about the FBI? I asked. Agent Jennifer Walsh is very interested. She's been trying to nail Senator Blackwood for 3 years. Your sister is his weak link. Young, arrogant, thinks she's untouchable. Walsh wants to meet with you tomorrow. Sarah looked up from her phone. The press leak worked. Art News just posted about rumors of a major Eleanor Hartwell discovery in Illinois. Victoria's already called me 3 times. I didn't answer. Mr. Whitmore had been quiet, studying documents with a magnifying glass. There's something else, he said slowly. Your mother's medical records, the ones from the month before she died. She went to 3 different doctors, all outside your father's influence. She was tested for poisoning. My blood went cold. What? Chronic arsenic exposure. Not enough to kill quickly, but enough to cause confusion, weakness, symptoms that looked like mental illness. Just like what happened to your grandmother, Eleanor. The room went silent. Finally, James spoke. They were poisoning her? To make the incompetency claim credible, Thomas said grimly. If she seemed mentally unstable, no one would believe her about the financial crimes or the paintings. My phone rang.
Victoria.
Put it on speaker, Thomas whispered, starting a recording device. Olivia, what have you done? Victoria's voice was tight, with barely controlled rage. I don't know what you mean. Don't play dumb. Art News is running stories about Eleanor Hartwell. Did you tell someone about that worthless farmhouse? Why would that matter? You said grandmother's paintings were all destroyed. A pause. They were. But rumors like this could affect my reputation. My future father-in-law is on the National Gallery board. We can't have people thinking we hid family assets. But we didn't. Did we, Victoria? Sign the papers, Olivia. Today. Or I swear to God, you'll regret it. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Actually, I said, surprising myself with my steadiness, I'm starting to get a pretty good idea. I hung up. Thomas smiled grimly. That was perfect. Documented threats. The next morning, Agent Jennifer Walsh arrived in an unmarked car. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She walked through the basement like it was a crime scene, which I supposed it was. Ms. Hartwell, she said finally, what you have here is evidence of a massive conspiracy. Art fraud, money laundering, possibly murder. But Victoria Hartwell has powerful friends. We need everything airtight before we move. What do you need from me?
Time.
And bait. She studied me. Your sister is going to escalate. When she does, we need to be ready to document everything. As if on cue, a black town car pulled up outside. Ryan stepped out, but he wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit followed, Detective Carl Morrison from Chicago PD. Ms. Hartwell, the detective said, I'm here for a wellness check. Your family is concerned about your mental state. I'm fine, thank you. I'll need to verify that. May I come in? Agent Walsh stepped into view, showing her FBI badge. Detective Morrison, what a surprise. Does your captain know you're doing wellness checks 3 hours outside your jurisdiction? Morrison's face reddened. I'm off duty. Doing a favor for friend. Which friend would that be? Victoria Hartwell or Senator Blackwood? I don't have to answer that. No, but you might want to explain it to Internal Affairs. I believe they're very interested in your recent financial improvements. New boat, is it? Morrison left quickly, Ryan trailing behind after shooting me a look of pure venom. That was their first move, Walsh said. There will be more. She was right. That afternoon, Dr. Patricia Reeves showed up, a psychiatrist who specialized in emergency interventions. Your sister has petitioned for an emergency psychiatric hold, she announced, flanked by 2 orderlies. Based on your history of mental illness and recent erratic behavior. What history? I demanded. Your therapy records indicate severe depression, anxiety, delusional thinking. Those are falsified, Dr. Amanda Price, my actual therapist, said as she walked up the porch steps. Sarah had called her when we saw the van approaching. I'm Dr. Olivia Hartwell's treating physician, and I can assure you she has no history of delusional thinking. Moreover, whoever provided you with supposed therapy records committed a HIPAA violation. Dr. Reeves examined the papers she'd been given, her face paling. These are forged. The letterhead is wrong. The license number doesn't match. You might want to verify your sources more carefully, Agent Walsh said, appearing again. Filing false psychiatric holds is a federal crime. After they left, I slumped against the door. How many more times can we fight them off? As many as it takes, James said firmly. But I think it's time we go on the offensive. That night, we implemented Phase 2. Sarah accidentally let slip to a gossip-hungry art blogger that the Eleanor Hartwell discovery was connected to the Hartwell family. Within hours, reporters were calling Victoria's firm. Meanwhile, Thomas had found something extraordinary in the financial records. Your sister didn't just steal paintings, he said. She's been collecting insurance on them. Every painting she sold illegally? She also filed insurance claims saying they were destroyed. That's fraud on a massive scale. How much? $40 million in false insurance claims over 5 years. James had made his own discovery in the 3rd basement room, one I hadn't even known existed until he found it behind a false wall. Olivia, he said, his voice shaking, you need to see this. The room was smaller than the others, more like a vault. Inside were documents, hundreds of them. Birth certificates, death certificates, medical records, financial statements. The complete history of the Hartwell family's crimes going back 50 years. Your grandfather had your grandmother committed not because she was mentally ill, but because she discovered he was embezzling from her family's estate, James read from a yellow document. He used the same arsenic poisoning method. My God, it's generational. Among the papers was a will, Eleanor's real will, leaving everything to her daughter Margaret, my mother. Never filed, never executed, because Eleanor was declared incompetent before she could sign it. But the most damning evidence was a series of photographs. Victoria and my father at the farmhouse, dated the night before my parents' accident. They were carrying something to my parents' car, something that looked suspiciously like the brake line components Thomas had identified as potentially tampered with. Who took these? I asked. Walter Garrison appeared in the doorway. I did. Your mother asked me to watch the house that night. She knew something was going to happen. Why didn't you go to the police? With photos of people carrying car parts? They'd have explained it away. But now, with everything else you've found. My phone buzzed. Marcus Stone, the developer, had sent a text. Time's up. See you at noon tomorrow with the sheriff. Let him come, Agent Walsh said. We'll be ready. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered into my mother's secret studio. Her last painting, the one I hadn't fully examined, called to me. It showed Victoria standing over two graves, counting money, but there was something else. In the corner, barely visible, was a date. Tomorrow's date. My mother had painted this 3 years ago. She knew, I whispered. Somehow, she knew it would come to this. The next morning, chaos arrived early. News vans lined the dirt road. The art world had connected the dots. Eleanor Hartwell's lost paintings had been found, and the Hartwell family was involved. Victoria arrived in a convoy of black SUVs at 11:30, half an hour before the developer. She stepped out looking immaculate as always, but I could see the cracks, her smile too tight, her eyes too bright. "Olivia," she said, cameras rolling, "I'm here to help my sister, who's clearly having a mental health crisis. Our family has a history of mental illness, and I'm concerned she's following our grandmother's tragic path." "That's interesting," I said loudly enough for the microphones to pick up. "Speaking of Grandma Eleanor, would you like to see her paintings? The ones you've been selling illegally for years." The color drained from Victoria's face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Then you won't mind if I show these nice reporters the basement." "You can't. The house is being demolished." "Actually," Mr. Whitmore said, stepping forward with official papers, "I have an emergency injunction preventing any action against this property pending investigation of art fraud, insurance fraud, and murder." "Murder?" Victoria laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're insane." Agent Walsh chose that moment to arrive with a full FBI team. "Victoria Hartwell, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, and suspicion of murder in the deaths of Harold and Margaret Hartwell." "You can't prove anything," Victoria snarled, her composure finally cracking. "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "Mom left us plenty of proof." I played the recording my mother had made. Victoria's voice, cold and calculating, discussing the break lines. The reporters pressed closer, cameras capturing everything. "That's fabricated."
Victoria screamed.
"She's crazy, just like Eleanor. Check her therapy records." "You mean the ones you falsified?" Dr. Price said, stepping forward. "I've already provided the FBI with the real records, along with documentation of how you illegally accessed and altered them." Senator Blackwood's car screeched to a halt, and he emerged, his face purple with rage. "This is a setup. You can't arrest my future daughter-in-law based on the ravings of a disturbed woman." "Senator," Agent Walsh said calmly, "we have a warrant for you too. Art fraud, money laundering, bribery, and conspiracy." As they were both led away in handcuffs, Victoria turned to me, her perfect facade completely shattered. "You stupid little bitch. You think you've won? You think you get to keep everything?" "I don't want everything," I said quietly. "I just wanted the truth." The FBI raid on Victoria's penthouse was broadcast live on every major news network. Agents carried out box after box of documents, while reporters speculated about the connection between the Hartwell family art discovery and the arrest of one of Chicago's most prominent lawyers. I watched from the farmhouse, surrounded by the team that had become my unlikely family. James had his arm around my shoulders, Sarah was fielding calls from every major museum in the world, and Thomas was coordinating with the FBI. They found 12 paintings in her penthouse, Agent Walsh told me over the phone. "The one stolen from your basement." She couldn't resist keeping trophies. The grand jury convened within a week. I testified for 6 hours, presenting every piece of evidence we'd found. The recordings, the photographs, the medical records showing arsenic poisoning, the forged psychiatric documents, the insurance fraud papers. Victoria testified too, but her story kept changing. First, she knew nothing about any paintings. Then she admitted knowing about them, but claimed our parents had given them to her. Finally, she blamed everything on our father, painting herself as another victim. The senator threw her under the bus immediately, claiming she'd seduced his son to gain access to his connections. His son, Jonathan Blackwood, held a press conference announcing their engagement was off and he'd been deceived by a manipulative woman. Ryan tried to disappear, but the FBI found him attempting to board a flight to Costa Rica. He folded immediately, admitting Victoria had hired him to seduce me years ago, to keep tabs on me, and ensure I never suspected the family had hidden assets. She knew about the paintings? I asked Agent Walsh. She's known since she was 16. Your father showed her the basement, made her his accomplice. Your mother never knew Victoria had been down there. The trial was set for 6 months out, but the media frenzy was immediate. Every major newspaper ran stories about the Hartwell Heritage heist. Art historians debated the value of the recovered paintings. True crime podcasts dissected every aspect of the case. But the biggest revelation came from an unexpected source. Dr. Patricia Reeves, the psychiatrist who'd tried to have me committed, came forward with information. Victoria Hartwell has been my patient for 10 years, she said in a deposition. She exhibited signs of severe antisocial personality disorder. She spoke often about her resentment of her sister's artistic talent and her mother's affection for Olivia. She provided session notes where Victoria had said, "Olivia gets love for her stupid paintings while I get nothing for actual achievements. One day, I'll take everything from her. She'll have nothing, and I'll have it all." The notes were dated 3 years before our parents' death. Walter Garrison revealed more history. "Eleanor wasn't the first," he said, sitting in my kitchen, now cleaned and slowly being restored. "Your great-grandmother, Rose, was also an artist. She also died young, declared insane. The men in your family have been stealing from the women for generations, using mental illness as a weapon." He showed me photographs from the 1920s, Rose Hartwell's paintings being loaded into trucks while she watched from a barred window. "Your grandmother Eleanor knew the pattern," he continued. "That's why she hid her paintings. She knew what was coming." The forensics team made another discovery. The car accident that killed my parents? The brake lines hadn't just been tampered with, they'd been cut with precision, timed to fail at a specific point on their regular route to Chicago. The same route they took every Sunday. It was planned for weeks, the investigator told me. Whoever did this knew exactly when and where the brakes would fail, at the steepest part of Highway 47, where recovery would be impossible. Victoria's computer, seized in the raid, contained searches for brake line failure, fatal car accidents, and inheritance law Illinois, dating back 6 months before our parents died. But it was my mother's final gift that sealed Victoria's fate. Hidden in the frame of her last self-portrait was a memory card. On it were hours of video recordings she'd made secretly over her final year. Victoria and my father planning my mother's commitment. Victoria researching arsenic poisoning. My father teaching Victoria how to forge documents. And finally, a recording from the night before they died. Victoria's voice clear and cold. "The brake lines are cut. They'll fail within 50 miles. Make sure you're visible at the charity gala tomorrow when it happens." My father's response. "What about afterwards?" "Olivia will inherit. Olivia will get nothing. I've made sure of that. The will leaves her that worthless farmhouse. She'll sell it cheap, never knowing what's underneath. We'll buy it through Marcus's company and discover the paintings later. And if she doesn't sell, then she has an accident too. Mental illness runs in the family, after all." The recording ended with my father saying, "You're just like me, Victoria. Cold enough to do what needs to be done." "No," Victoria's voice replied. "I'm better than you. You're weak, sentimental. You actually feel guilty about Margaret. I don't feel anything." When this recording was played in court, the gallery gasped. Victoria's lawyer tried to object, but the authentication was solid. I had to leave the courtroom when they played my mother's goodbye video, the one she'd hidden for me to find. "My darling Olivia," she said, looking directly at the camera. "If you're watching this, then they succeeded.
But don't mourn for me.
I chose this path to protect you. Victoria and your father are planning something terrible, but I've made sure you'll be safe. The farmhouse is yours alone. Mr. Whitmore made sure of that. Everything you need to expose them is hidden there." She paused, tears in her eyes. "I failed Eleanor. I couldn't save her from your grandfather. But I won't fail you. The paintings, the documents, the evidence, it's all there. You're stronger than you know, my artist, my truth keeper. Don't let them win. I love you more than words can say. Paint for me, Olivia. Paint all the beauty they tried to steal from us. The video ended with her holding up one of her paintings of me, as a child, laughing in the sunlight. Victoria was denied bail. The judge deemed her a flight risk and a danger to others, especially to me. She sat in county jail as her empire crumbled. Her law firm dissolved overnight, clients fleeing the scandal. Her assets were frozen pending the outcome of both criminal and civil trials. Senator Blackwood cut a deal, testifying against Victoria in exchange for reduced charges. He revealed the full extent of their scheme, hundreds of millions in laundered money, dozens of forged artworks sold as genuine, a network of corruption that reached into major museums and galleries. But Victoria's final attempt to hurt me came from an unexpected angle. She gave an interview from jail to a tabloid journalist, claiming I had seduced our father, that the paintings were payment for my silence about our relationship. It was so vile, so obviously false, that even the tabloid wouldn't run it without heavy disclaimers. But it hurt. To see her hatred so naked, so vicious. She would rather invent the most horrible lies than admit what she'd done. The trial began on a cold Monday in March. The prosecution laid out their case methodically: financial crimes, insurance fraud, forgery, and finally, murder. Victoria took the stand in her own defense, and for 3 days, she spun a web of lies so complex that even her own lawyer looked confused. She claimed I had planted the evidence, that our mother had been mentally ill and made the recordings under delusion, that the paintings were forgeries I'd created to frame her. Then the prosecutor asked one simple question. If your sister created these paintings to frame you, how do you explain the fact that they've been authenticated as being painted between 1950 and 1975, decades before either of you were born? Victoria's mask finally, completely shattered. She screamed that I had always been the favorite, that I didn't deserve our mother's love, that she was the one who worked hard while I played with paint. I earned everything, she shrieked. The grades, the degree, the success. And what did she do? Finger painting. But who did Mom love? Who did Mom paint? Not me. Never me. So you killed her? The prosecutor asked quietly. She was going to give it all to Olivia. The paintings, the money, everything. Just because Olivia could paint. It wasn't fair. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she couldn't stop talking, years of rage pouring out. Father understood. He knew I was the superior daughter. We were going to split everything, but then he got weak, started feeling guilty. So yes, I cut the brake lines. Both their brake lines. I did what needed to be done. The courtroom was silent except for the court reporter's keys clicking. I only regret not dealing with Olivia sooner, Victoria continued, staring at me with pure hatred. She should have been in that car. She was supposed to visit that weekend, but she canceled for some stupid art show. If she'd been there like she was supposed to be, none of this would have happened. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Victoria to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As they led her away, she turned to me one last time. You'll be alone forever, she said. Who could love someone who destroyed their own sister? I didn't destroy you, I replied quietly. You destroyed yourself. The estate auction was held at Christie's in New York. I kept 5 of Eleanor's paintings, the prairie landscape that had taken my breath away, a portrait of my mother as a child, and 3 abstract pieces that seemed to hold all the pain and beauty of her confined life. The rest sold for a combined $127 million. I also kept all of my mother's paintings. They weren't for sale, weren't for the world. They were her love letters to me, and I would treasure them forever. With the money, I established the Eleanor and Margaret Hartwell Foundation. It provides funding for female artists, especially those dealing with mental health challenges or family trauma. The first grant went to a young woman whose father had destroyed her sculptures because art wasn't a real job. The farmhouse transformation took 2 years. I supervised every detail, making sure to preserve its history while creating something beautiful. The basement became a climate-controlled gallery and preservation laboratory. The barn was converted into artist studios. The main house was restored to its 1890s glory, but with modern amenities. It opened as the Hartwell Artist Retreat and Museum. Artists could apply for residencies, working in the studios while living in the guest quarters I'd built. The museum showcased not just Eleanor's work, but the entire hidden history of artistic women silenced by their families. I returned to teaching, but differently now. I became a visiting professor at the Art Institute of Chicago, teaching a course on art, truth, and family legacy. My students were hungry to understand how creativity could survive attempts to destroy it. Art isn't just about making beautiful things, I told them. It's about truth-telling. It's about preserving what others want to erase. It's about resilience. Dr. David Brennan came into my life through the museum. He was a historian writing a biography of Eleanor, fascinated by her work and horrified by what had been done to her. Our first conversation lasted 8 hours. Our first date lasted 12. "You're nothing like your family," he said one evening as we walked through the prairie behind the farmhouse. "I am exactly like my family," I corrected. "Like Eleanor, like my mother. We're the truth keepers, the artists, the ones who refuse to be silenced." He proposed in Eleanor's studio, surrounded by her paintings. I said yes. Victoria wrote me letters from prison. The first ones were full of rage and threats. Then bargaining. She had information about more paintings if I would help reduce her sentence. Then, slowly, something like remorse. "I dream about them," she wrote in her 5th year. "Mom and Dad. They don't speak to me. They just stand there, disappointed. The way they used to look at you, but never at me." I read every letter, but never responded. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. Walter Garrison lived to see the museum's 5th anniversary. On his deathbed, he held my hand and said, "Eleanor would be so proud. You didn't just save her paintings, you saved her story." After his funeral, I found one last secret in the farmhouse. Walter had left me a letter with directions to a hidden panel in the attic. Behind it was Eleanor's masterpiece, a mural painted on wooden panels that could be assembled into a massive work. It showed 3 generations of Hartwell women, each painting the next into existence. At the center was a figure that looked like me, though Eleanor had painted it decades before I was born. In my painted hands was a key, and in the background, a farmhouse with light pouring from every window. The inscription read, "For the daughter who will make us whole again." I assembled the mural in the museum's main gallery. It became the centerpiece, the work people traveled from around the world to see. Art historians called it the prophecy, Eleanor's prediction that one day, a daughter would reclaim what had been stolen. 5 years after the trial, I stood in the same country club where the will had been read, accepting a humanitarian award for the foundation's work. We'd helped over 500 artists, provided mental health support to countless others, and changed laws around artistic estate preservation. "Art saved my life," I told the audience. Not metaphorically, but literally. The paintings in that farmhouse basement weren't just canvases. They were evidence of women who refused to be erased, voices that refused to be silenced. They were my inheritance, yes, but more than that, they were my salvation. I announced that night that all proceeds from the award would fund a new program, art therapy in women's prisons. I didn't say Victoria's name, but everyone knew why. Even those who have done terrible things deserve the chance to create something beautiful, I said. Art doesn't judge. It just asks for truth. The program was approved at Victoria's prison 6 months later. I received a letter from the art teacher. "Your sister was my first student. She painted for 3 hours without stopping. When I asked what she was painting, she said, 'My sister, the way I should have seen her.' The painting was beautiful. She asked me to tell you she's sorry. I keep that letter but have never seen the painting. Some art is meant for the artist alone. David and I had our first child 2 years later, a daughter we named Eleanor Margaret. She was born with my green eyes and my mother's stubborn chin. At 6 months old, she was already reaching for paintbrushes. She's going to be an artist," David said, watching her smear baby food into surprisingly deliberate patterns. She's going to be whatever she wants, I replied. But she'll always know she's loved for who she is, not what she achieves. The farmhouse is full of life now. Artists come and go, creating and healing. School groups tour the museum, learning about the Hartwell women and the cost of silencing voices. The prairie grass grows tall around the sculpture garden where modern artists have added their own works to Eleanor's legacy. I painted my first real painting, not just teaching examples, but my own artistic expression, on the 10th anniversary of finding the basement. It was a portrait of myself, standing in front of the restored farmhouse, holding the $300 from the will. But in the reflection in my eyes, you can see them all. Eleanor, my mother, even Victoria as she could have been if she'd chosen love over greed. 3 generations of women, each shaped by the choices they made when faced with the weight of inheritance. I titled it My True Inheritance and hung it in my office at the farmhouse, where I work as the foundation's director. Every day, I pass it on my way to help another artist find their voice. The farmhouse that was meant to be my humiliation became my triumph. The $300 that was meant to show my worthlessness became the symbol of my worth. The sister who tried to destroy me became the catalyst for my purpose. Victoria remains in prison. I visit her once a year, on our mother's birthday. We don't talk about the past or the future. We talk about art. She's become quite good, her teacher says. Her paintings sell in the prison art program, with proceeds going to victims' funds. Do you ever paint, Mom? I asked during my last visit. Every day, she said quietly. But I can never get her eyes right. They always look disappointed. Maybe that's the truth you need to paint through, I suggested. She nodded, and for a moment, I saw the sister she could have been. The one who might have chosen differently if she hadn't been so consumed by what she thought she deserved. As I drove away from the prison, back to my farmhouse, my family, my life built on truth rather than lies, I thought about inheritance. Victoria had inherited our father's greed, his willingness to destroy for gain. I had inherited Eleanor's vision, our mother's love, the ability to create beauty from pain. We each got exactly what we reached for. The farmhouse stands strong now, no longer broken but rebuilt, no longer hidden but celebrated. Tonight, there's a gala opening for a new exhibition, young artists who've overcome family trauma to create stunning works. I stand in Eleanor's studio, now my own, and pick up a paintbrush. David is in the garden with little Eleanor, teaching her the names of flowers. The sun sets over the prairie, turning everything gold. My phone buzzes with a message from the prison art teacher. Victoria painted something new today. She said to tell you it's called forgiveness. She knows you'll never see it, but she needed to paint it anyway. I set down my phone and returned to my canvas. I'm painting the prairie at sunset, the way Eleanor did, the way my mother did in secret. But in my version, the farmhouse windows glow with warm light, and shadows of women stand in every doorway, not ghosts but guardians, watching over those who come seeking truth. The $300 from the will sits framed in the museum, alongside a placard that reads, "Sometimes the smallest inheritance carries the greatest worth." Eleanor Hartwell bought this farmhouse for $300 in 1950. Her granddaughter Olivia inherited it for the same amount in 2025. Between those two transactions lies a story of art, truth, and the ultimate triumph of love over greed. Visitors often ask if I regret what happened, if I wish I'd inherited the millions rather than the mystery. I tell them the truth. I inherited exactly what I needed, not what my parents left me, but what the women before me preserved. They saved their truth in art, hid their love in paint, and trusted that one day, a daughter would understand. I am that daughter. This is my inheritance. And it's worth more than all the money in the world. The farmhouse is full of voices now, artists laughing, children learning, visitors discovering. The basement that once held secrets now holds workshops where people learn to restore damaged art. The kitchen where I once broke down in despair now hosts communal dinners where artists share their stories. And in the attic, carefully preserved, hangs Victoria's first prison painting, the one she doesn't know I acquired through the teacher. It's a portrait of two sisters as children, holding hands, before the world taught them to be enemies. I keep it as a reminder that inheritance isn't just what we're given, it's what we choose to do with it. Victoria chose to destroy for wealth. I chose to rebuild for truth. The broken farmhouse became whole again, just as Eleanor predicted. And so did I. If you had to choose between inheriting millions but living with blood on your hands, or inheriting nothing but keeping your soul intact, which would you honestly choose? Like this video if Olivia's journey touched you, and subscribe for more stories about families where the real inheritance isn't money. It's the truth we're brave enough to uncover.